This happened in the summer in northern Ontario, Canada, near the town of Parry Sound. Me and my friend had headed up north to spend some time at my grandpa's cabin. He shares it with a few other hunters next to a very big lake. You need to take a boat to get to the cabin, I had gone up there a few weeks prior just to wander around and help my dad with some repairs and improvements to the cabin. I looked on a printout of a satellite map, and I found the area that the cabin's in. There was no Wi-Fi in the cabin, and it's sort of in a valley, and it was very hard to get any sort of signal in. And I noticed that there was a small lake north of the one we're at, and there was a small island inside the lake. Me and my dad go to the boat and found a nice pristine little island. We don't actually go on it though. We can see that there's some swampy areas and a small fiberglass boat that hunters use to hunt ducks sometimes. The lake was much higher than the one we come from, and it would have been impossible for us to take the boat that we just come in to get up the hill. Me and my friend head back to explore the island. We headed up the hill and noticed there's a small gorge that led into the lake. It used to be a river but was blocked up by a beaver dam. Me and my friend start to walk through it, and I start to feel uneasy because of the increase of bugs in the gorge, and being slightly afraid of running into a beaver. It turns out my friend was feeling the same too, and we don't know why. He just felt that there was something weird about the lake. We left the gorge and made our way up to the top of the hill. We overturned the boat, and after a few failed attempts of trying to launch the boat, we make it to the lake. Now I must say that I'm almost 6'4" and my friend's 5'7", so it's a challenge to get us in the boat, along with there only being one oar. We eventually made our way to the middle of the lake, aiming for the island, with my friend rowing the boat. We both feel very uneasy, but I put my mind off and try and distract myself a bit. Now, I'm bored, and being in a small boat, see if we could tip over if one of us sneezed for a laugh. We're almost 2 hours away from a town or hospital though, so we're both kind of worried about getting stranded at the time. We're in the middle of the lake with a small swamp in front of us, and a rock face around 20 feet from our left, and the woods to the right. We could see the water around us moving, the wind creating a slight wave. We carefully looked below us to see if we had hit a sandbar, but we didn't see any sand beneath us, just inky black waters of the lake. We put the oar in the water and don't feel any current. We found though that we could move to the left and right, but just not forward, almost like we hit an invisible wall in a game. We both felt that the boat starts to sink down a little, almost like being sucked into the lake. Now, my friend started to row to the right and we make our way to the right, then once near the coast to the island. Far away from the island, seems to be nice and pristine, but once we get closer, it's desolate. The trees are dying, or dead. The island's covered in stone and pine needles and dead lichen, with swamp and decay covering the lake. We managed to tie up the boat next to a dead pine tree, and we spend some time on the island checking it out and looking for anything of interest. After spending some time on the island and running out of bug spray, we decided to head back to the cabin. My friend took the oar and started to prod the water around off the island to find a good place to stay. Around this time, we both get this grave sense of unease. Personally, it felt like dread, kind of mixed with anxiety, like your body saying, "Get out of here now or you're gonna die." We then hear some commotion in the water, and we look around, and 10 feet away from us we see some geese running into the water. And we look around, and right where they've come from, we see what appears to be a black sculpture / scroll behind some rocks. Kind of like a mix, I guess. The closest thing I can describe is the thing in Star Wars when Jawas go behind the rocks. My friend also said he heard a strange noise, but I didn't notice it. We also had noticed too that the lake had gotten awfully still, and that the forest fell silent. We found a good place to port, and we decided we're going to row back. As we start heading back, I look to where we started and see a strange black figure staring at us standing where we left. At this point, I didn't want to point it out, so just start rowing. I row for another 10 minutes and take a short break. But whenever we take a break, we could hear the crushing of leaves and breaking of branches following us in the woods. I hug the coast as we head back. Even when we're staying around 12 feet away from the shore, I can't see the bottom of the lake. We eventually got back and put the boat back where we found it. When we tipped it over, we find scratch marks all over the bottom of the boat as though something clawed it. As we start to leave, we decide to take one last look at the beaver dam. That's where we noticed there was a cave behind the dam. Upon seeing this, we decided to get the hell out and make our way back to the main lake, where we used our walkie-talkies to tell my granddad to come and pick us up. He's out with some hunting friends and we can't even get a signal at first, but eventually find him. Now as we left, I looked back and saw the figure standing on the island later that night too, as me and my friend were at a fire pit next to the cabin. We start hearing strange noises coming from the woods, almost sounding like a person trying to make a hoot sound of an owl. Although this could have just been my grandpa's hunting buddies in the cabin, but why would they do that? Now the land itself used to be Oaja, and I'm just wondering if anyone has any kind of story similar to mine. At first, I'm sorry for any mistakes. English isn't my first language. So as a child, I had a very traumatic experience. You can believe it or not, but this is what happened to me and why I'm still scared of the dark. When I was younger, I can't say exactly how old I was, about 4 I think. My big brother and I loved to camp outside our home. In front of the house there was a small forest. If you went outside, you stood directly in front of this really small forest. There was never anything spooky about it. We even played in it. Even when it was just a steep slope with trees, it was our favourite place to be, just playing, doing stupid things. Being a child, it was always my favourite place and a happy one. One day, we decided to camp outside again. We build the tent at night and we're inside it keeping warm. Everything looks normal. I'm not afraid at all. Also, brave enough to be like 15 meters to the entrance of a toilet in the middle of the night. I went in. A few minutes later I come back. I don't even look at the forest whatsoever. Do you know the feeling like somebody's watching you? Well, I have that. I had the feeling that I need to stop and look in the forest, so I stopped. I stopped to look at the forest, and there's 2 glowing red eyes staring back at me. I was frozen in fear, and I ran back to the tent into the safety, shivering in fear. Now I've never seen anything like it. It wasn't a car because there's no roads nearby, and my brother said he saw them too, so I know it wasn't just me. It couldn't have been a predator because there was no light to make the eyes reflect and they were far too big. I've literally never seen anything like it, and I always get scared of forests today because of it. There is something my sister experienced about a week ago, which was similar to an experience a friend of hers had a month before. She was sleeping at her boyfriend's house, which backs onto a mountain with a forest starting in his backyard, when she decided to go get herself some food from upstairs. Her boyfriend refused to go with her as he had school in the morning and it's already 1. His room's in the basement, so she went up the stairs to the kitchen, on the same level as the rest of the family's bedrooms. Because she didn't want to wake up everyone else, she used her phone flashlight while she prepared herself bananas and hummus. While doing so, she heard what sounded like large footsteps. It actually sounded like a dog, but they don't have any pets. The door opens and closes about 3 or 4 times before finally closing. Then, the footsteps progress down the hall in her direction to a closet door where the same thing happened. Only this time, the door was left open. She's starting to get freaked out now. She tries to brush it off as a family member and went back to chopping her banana. Out of the corner of her eye though, she saw what appeared to be a very large black figure slowly leaning its way around the hallway corner, trying to look into the kitchen. She looked up and it's gone. The same thing happened again. Only this time its neck is stretched out longer than before, looking at her. She looks up and finally catches a glimpse of something with white glowing eyes before disappearing around the corner. At this point, she's freaked out and grabs her knife. She quickly went around the corner to turn the light off, before gathering all of her stuff to head downstairs. When she told her boyfriend in the morning, he told her that the closed door is not just a closet door, it's an empty room with the attic door in the ceiling. They went in the room the next day to find that paint had been scratched off the attic door and the floor was scratched beneath it. A friend of hers had a similar incident a month or so earlier when he was taking a leak in the backyard. He looked up only to see a tall creature with what he described to be glowing eyes and huge teeth standing amongst the trees. Once it notices him, it ran off, but then started coming after him once he started running towards the house. I work out in a very isolated stretch of the Olympic Peninsula of Washington State, and I've had an alarming amount of strange experiences while out here. The basic thing that happens are humans screaming far away in the woods. It's a really dense rainforest with no trails. Hearing high-pitched voices say 1 or 2 words like again or thank you. Sometimes I'm all alone, and sometimes my boyfriend hears them too. There is a really upsetting presence that sometimes appears to be a tall shadow that crouches and peeks out from behind things in a dumpster area, and all but a couple of co-workers have had unpleasant experiences while taking the recycling out. Another friend saw a face gliding by her window like it was on a skateboard looking in. Until recently, it's been mostly ghost happenings around here, but in the last week, we've had a few things that are different. I mean like strange lights. The first thing that happened was my boyfriend and I are out in our bedroom and we're flooded with an intense bright light. We just stare at each other for a while, confused as to what this is. The light then flickers on and off and the room went black to pitch darkness. Avram backs off onto a dense forest, and we promptly look outside to make sure nobody's there as this is a national forest, but there's no one. There's nothing but darkness and no movement. 2 nights ago, a co-worker of ours was returning home late at night when he got out of his car, and he can see an orange light hovering over one of the housing units. It does a couple of loops before popping out of sight. Now, the thing that worries me is that these are becoming more consistent. I spoke to a park ranger and he has no idea what they are either. I hope these stop. So a little while ago, I watched a news broadcast on my local news channel. It's about a woman that went missing 2 months ago. The circumstances of her disappearance were odd. She was staying in a family cabin in the woods, and she said she got in a shootout with 2 men, claiming she shot one in the face. She frantically called her friend and told her these things. The specific things she said is unknown. The police found bullet holes and other evidence that suggests there was a shootout, but they find no blood anywhere, despite her saying she shot one in the face. Her belongings are found, and it's all on the roof, and she's been missing ever since. There's no sense of this, it's like she literally just vanished.